a panel on, looking at the voice and visibility in Asia's changing social landscape. And it's going to be an interesting topic since there are so many of us here really both understand or obviously use social media every day, and we're also ingrained in the Asia landscape in many ways through our work. And social media evidently has reshaped the way we learn, connect with people, and engage with one another. And nowhere this is really visible in Asia. But the thing is that the conventional wisdom is that Asia is a monolith. And most of us here understand that it's not. And this is really evident when you look at the social media landscape in Asia. Here you have, different platforms. Mainly, they're all, Western-made platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. And the number of the users here are, it's a lot, but already excludes China. But when we look at China, they even have more different platforms, Douyin, which also, if you look at the geopolitical landscape and the firm kind of battle between, who gets to own the TikTok in the US, that's another evidence of different, social media landscape. They also have WeChat. And just to, quick show of hands, who here has WeChat, Instagram, and Facebook in their phones installed right now? Perfect. Huh? All three at the same time, or if you've downloaded it before. Perfect, because that really represents that even your phone understands that, social media in Asia is fragmented. You understand if you go to China, you cannot really use Instagram unless you use VPN. So there's so many restrictions. And given that it's more, the ecosystem there is really fast evolving and it's really deeply entangled with geopolitics, commerce, and culture, it is really understand for us to dig deep into this issue. And lucky enough, we have three wonderful experts here who really understand in many ways through their experience, and who will help us clear up bringing their unique perspective and how social media landscape is shaping or being reshaped by geopolitics, business, and cultural understanding in Asia. So first, we have Simon Starker, who was a 2024 Gen Fellow. He currently works as a researcher at Avenue Suisse. And also joining us is Amy Wang, who's currently part of the Gen 2025 cohort. She's also an entrepreneur and works as supporting Swiss companies in her company called Think East, helping connect companies in Switzerland with China through brand and digital marketing strategies, and also helping them promote cultural understanding, collaboration between two different markets. And lastly, we're also joined by Julia Szpinska, who's also a gallerist and art historian, and through her work, she's helping to foster a cultural bridge for East Asian contemporary art in Switzerland. And she's also the founder of the Szpinska Gallery next door to Asia Society office. And that gallery serves some kind of like a platform to showcase diverse work and connecting collectors with art, or with artists. So given that I've kind of introduced the macro level here, and we will start with the geopolitics, the whole grand scheme of things, and starting with Simon. We already discussed that. That this kind of landscape, and just looking at social media, you have different kinds of like platforms that are being used. And how do you think Asia's changing fragmented social landscape and evolving digital ecosystems reflect the broader geopolitics in China, regarding regional events on TikTok and how different countries have different platforms?
Yeah, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Actually, I'm the least qualified person, certainly after this vote, to talk with you about social media. I don't even have Facebook or Instagram, but maybe that also gives me the most objective perspective here. I think it's clear that the whole digital ecosystem has become a theater for geopolitical competition, rivalry, but also cooperation. And social media, who is just a part of this landscape, is kind of instrument, but also battleground at the same time. And as this map behind me shows a bit, yeah, I mean, I could make myself a very easy task and saying, look, we have just a fragmented world here. We have sort of 3 blocks. We have a China-aligned system, we have a US-aligned, and we have the Southeast Asian states who are sort of like hedging between the 2 blocks. We have these regional TikTok banks, like in India, like 5 years ago. And yeah, and that would make already an answer. But the situation at the moment is very dynamic, and moving very fast. And I think we need a bit another framework than this very static view on the map. And I think that an economic security view actually applies best here. So what do I mean by economic security? It means actually that we're currently like looking at economic interdependence more and more as a vulnerability and not anymore as an asset actually. That's not only true for goods, like actually putting tariffs on goods, that's a bit 19th century. So the good mercantilists of the 21st century, actually they work with data, they work in services. And of course the current Trump administration has added a lot of dynamics here. Currently the US government is outlining every digital policy of its trading partners that they say it's damaging to US companies. And so you can really see how digital policy actually becomes trade policy, and that trade policy sort is also security policy. I think it's kind of clear to everyone. And I think that these different digital policies now will become, during the next month, or already now becoming like bargaining chips in negotiations. There will be much pressure on many states to change, and they will have to adapt very fastly. We've already seen that Trump, for instance, has offered China a reduction in tariffs if China would approve the sale of TikTok. India, for instance, has removed levy on digital advertisement, and although they said it wasn't because of the tariffs, but anyway, and this will be going on, and it will concern much regulation, which until now hasn't been considered as classical foreign economic policy topics. It will be, just to highlight a few areas of pressure, it will be about taxation. So if you have taxes on digital services, this will be discussed. It will be about online content regulation. You maybe know the Digital Services Act of the EU. Many Asian countries have copied some parts of it, usually the bad parts. It's also about restricting data flows over borders. There is no country left, actually, or almost no country, which has no restrictions on data flows. Then we can also, I mean, I could go around now for hours about threshold obligations, about local content requirements. Even Switzerland has that with the Lex Netflix. But yeah, let's leave it here.
I think those are really good points and really showcasing that there are differences in even how how people there in Asia respond to changes or differences in the social media landscape there. But can you briefly touch upon how states use social media? You kind of touched upon this, use social media to assert influence and change narratives. What kind of example that comes to mind?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question because the IR students, the international relations students of ours will know that this week Joseph Nye unfortunately died, the great architect of the concept of soft power. So that this idea that you can influence other countries as a state in not using coercive measures, so not with tanks, with military, or using economic sanctions or whatever, but just by the power of attenuation. And I think that, basically this goes, maybe influencing other states through social media, goes in this direction of using soft power. Now we have revisionist actors like China or the US sort of also, but I don't want to talk about the US or Russia, which are using social media, but in such an aggressive way where you actually can ask, where actually it shows a little bit that the concept of soft power maybe is a bit flawed at this point. But I mean, China is super interesting because there is kind of an imitation game going on between the US and China, because first, the Communist Party was afraid of social media. And now the US became afraid of the social media, and you see this alliance between government and tech companies, which are coming closer together, which is actually more the Chinese model. But just to finish, big challenges for democracies, because you have on the one side, if you're influenced by misinformation, disinformation, you have a non-response risk. So if you do nothing, it might undermine democracy on the one hand, but if you do a bit too much, if you start censoring, there is an over-response risk. So we need to be very careful, I think.
Yeah, I mean, now you kind of provided that the concept of soft power and how, you know, culture is really important in this. But bringing in the kind of the business side of the discussion, Amy, how do you think that, you know, given the different culture nuances and platforms and the differing social media like behaviors in Asia, in addition to like differences in, you know, the ecosystem itself, how do you think it affects digital marketing strategies and brand positioning by countries, given that's like the landscape in Asia or generally in China? And do you think, how do businesses navigate this like differences in platforms? Like you have WeChat, you have Red, you have TikTok, even Douyin in China, or other social media platforms. How do you think the Western kind of like side of things, who are unfamiliar in the West, navigate that side? Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question. So I think from a business perspective, it's very important for foreign businesses to understand that each social media platform in China has its unique aspects. So there are some really key areas I think foreign businesses need to understand in order to navigate the very different social media landscape. And one of the key area is the reach of the social media platforms. We have already seen on the graph that, so for example, WeChat, over 1 billion users are using it every day. And people need to understand that China is a mobile-first country, meaning that everyone has at least one mobile phone. So you can leave the house with only your mobile phone, and for example, with only WeChat, you can order your taxi with WeChat, you can go to a coffee shop, you can order your coffee, you can become a member there, you can pay your coffee, you know, you can go back without ever leaving WeChat. You can do everything within the app. So, you know, people sometimes compare WeChat with WhatsApp as the Chinese equivalent, but it's really much more. And for companies, it's also very important to understand in China, people are not really using that much laptops and go on websites to Google, for example, a new business. They also go on WeChat and, you know, see, okay, do they have official presence? You know, are they credible? So you really need these platforms to also create visibility, credibility, and trustworthiness. And the second key area I think is important to understand is the different functionalities. So I've already talked about WeChat, but let's, for example, take Red Note, or also known as Xiaohongshu. People sometimes compare it with Instagram, but it's also much more than only a social media app, because, you know, in the last couple of years, it has become China's #1 search engine. So, for example, if a Chinese tourist comes to Zurich, and, you know, I want to look for the best coffee shop, you know, I don't go to Google or Baidu, I go on Red Note and, you know, I type in Zurich's best coffee shop, you know. So it really also has like this dynamic and, you know, the speed of how new platforms are also replacing older ones is really impressive. And also, let's look at the e-commerce side, right? If you are on RedNote, you want to learn about a new brand or a new product, you check their official account, you learn about, you educate yourself basically also through social media. And you can also shop within the same app. So it's also this aspect or this development of social commerce, so social media plus e-commerce, that is really taking importance in China. And I think third key area that foreign businesses really need to understand is who is your target audience and on which platform do you reach them, right? So I've mentioned everyone uses WeChat, so it's important, for example, for a bigger brand to, have an official presence as well, and to have visibility. But for example, if you want to reach female consumers, look at RedNote, because over 70% of RedNote users are female. They are urban citizens. They are mostly, millennials. So, also know the target audience of these platforms. So I think it really comes down to, for foreign businesses, if you want to reach your audience, you need to know where they are, what apps they use, and how you can reach them and what stories you want to tell them, basically to also build your community.
I mean, those are really great points that, understanding of entering the Chinese market is essential for Western companies. But, most of the conversation that we've had here is really to understand how the West must adapt or understand, Chinese culture or Asian culture in general, if they want to conduct businesses or just engage with the culture there when they're visiting for travel purposes. But what about the reverse? And Julia, I think you can really provide a good point of view here, because you're working on really connecting artists, collectors, and allowing them to understand the reverse side of things, like going into Switzerland in your galleries, showing their artwork. So how do you think, how do you see Chinese or Asian audiences as well interpreting and engaging with European culture through digital platform and the arts? How did also the proliferation of use of social media kind of aided that, and knowing that our social media behavior is super different from theirs? Do you think it also plays the same level of importance from their perspective? The idea of understanding European culture. Do you think that's also in there?
Thank you so much for the question and inviting to this wonderful panel. Yes, being a bridge, for the Asian artists coming here to Switzerland to exhibit, to build their portfolio, is essential. To understand, how the culture sector works, and even though we live in this global world where we should have had global discourses, we still the whole art history is Western oriented, and still in order to become a bigger brands, because now artists, they're all small brands, so to say, you need to be approved by Western platforms, meaning that I have some artists who have large audiences on Xiaohongshu or WeChat. They have thousands, 100,000s of followers. They are no one in Europe, and that's kind of struggle, and you need to re-establish them from the scratch on Instagram, on YouTube, and whatsoever. And today we see that I can say only about the culture sector most, that either an artist or a culture person, they all try to become a self-brand, one-person brand. And for this, they normally use Instagram. So that's maybe the platform for the culture at the moment. And also, if we speak about curators, institutions, that would be LinkedIn. So these are the major platforms. Yeah.
Well, I'll be just kind of, zooming out a bit that that we all have kind of these discussions about, the changes in Asia and Europe and how we engage with social media, but this digital transformation is ongoing. Based on your experiences and your research or engagements with other clients or with artists, just looking ahead, what do you think are like the trends? Do you think that will shape the most in changing or empowering voices and showing more visibility in Asia's social media ecosystem? Is it going to be again AI, like the talk of the town? Would it be greater fragmentation? Would it be through politics? Would it be regulation? How would it then change? For example, maybe in businesses, different strategies. Do you see in the future that there might be changes? Again, changing narratives in how states use this, or through art shows or any kinds of interaction between collectors and artists. Do you think there will be shifts or big shifts in the near future or long term? Just
maybe I continue with culture. What I notice what's going on in West, because we're like a very small segment, and the products we offer, it's a bit of like a luxury. And like while it's been quite chaotic outside, I feel that people tend to kind of close in a smaller shell. And now I know that like lots of rich people, they really leave Instagram, so they stop using any social networks, and they start to build this kind of circles, and they like transfer the information like mouth to mouth, and do like smaller meetings, smaller gatherings, like private events, and then invite artists there. So that is like really top segment. But sure, like AI contributes a lot to the art production, but also to the art like critiques, I cannot call it, but art writing, so to say. And here we see actually a lot of losses, because AI cannot really compare. It's still like art writing is a lot like philosophical thought, and AI until now could not really produce like independent thoughts in this sense. So here I think we're still relying a lot on the professionals, on humanitarians.
Maybe I'm going to continue. So I think for the social media landscape in China, I definitely also see continuing trends in the area of, AI. And we already see, for example, virtual influencers or, AI assistants, or like really more immersive experiences for consumers. But I think my point, also like looking ahead, especially in terms of, foreign businesses entering the Chinese market, is really, as I mentioned before, to really adopt the agile mindset, and really be open to these new developments within the field, and like try things out. Don't be so afraid to fail, and go with the flow. I think that's the point I really want to make.
Yeah, I think the big shift in geopolitics and the world economy is already happening. It's already happening, and I think it's quite obvious. I think we're going to see in the future like much more sort of decisions where you're not sure why something is happening. Do you forbid platform XYZ because of national security issues, or maybe you just want to promote a national champion? So, and to distinguish that, to have a different view on these topics, this is going to be extremely difficult. And I think in influencing narratives from state, I think like the big trend now is AI. You've all maybe seen this video from like typical American workers working in manufacturing again, or like China apparently launched a campaign where they're showing news anchors who are deep fakes. Looks quite funny. Recommend to look to look that up, but don't believe what they say, of course.
I mean, it's a bit different in the US, so yeah. But yeah, again, thanks for really sharing these insights, Julia, Simon, and Amy.